Hi there. Today on Typical Books, we're going to be talking about all the books that caught my eye coming out for April. That is April 2025. It is a dreary, horrible day today. It doesn't remind me of spring has sprung or anything like that, so it's a perfect time to talk about horror books because that's what I'll be reading in this dreary time. We're in the middle of like an ice storm here, so what's nice is if the power goes out, there shouldn't be any interruption except the lights back there will turn off. It's not like storming, but it has been raining and it has been freezing, so it's weighing down the trees and the hydro lines and all that stuff, but we'll see. There's 200,000 people without power right now. I am not one of them, so I'm very, very lucky. So yes, there's quite a few really cool books coming out. I know I had talked about one, The Thorns, in my previous video, and one thing I noticed in the previous two new release videos is a lot of yellow text, and that continues, and this woodcut look, which also continues. I don't know what the new trends will be that I seem to tease out of each month's new horror releases. I didn't pick as many this time either because there's quite a few books that are kind of like, you know, YA, or they're just dramas and tragedies, or they're sci-fi, a lot of sci-fi stuff that doesn't really fit, or things that are getting releases right now that have already been released. So we're getting like paperback releases or special edition releases, and I'm not really getting into all of those. So I forget, I think there's like 13 books here. So we'll start out April 1st with Freakslaw by Jane Flett. And I love the name because I love coleslaw quite a lot. My sister just made a whole bunch of sauerkraut, and we kept mixing up the names when we were talking and calling her sauerkraut coleslaw and calling my coleslaw sauerkraut. But yeah, I digress. Ferris wheel, pupil in a burning eye kind of look on this cover. It's got pink and teal and yellow text on the cover. The cover tells us nothing about this book except that it's going to be bizarre. It does have summer colors though, so in the summer of 1997, and the repressed Scottish town of Pitlaw is itching for a change. Enter the Freakslaw, a traveling carnival of deviant queers and architects of mayhem, and there's Gloria, the fortune teller, and worm charmer, the daughter of Nancy, a contortionist witch, big-hearted tightrope walker, werewolf Louis, not to mention illusionist and conjoined twins, Cass and Henry, and tattooed human pincushion, the Pin Gal. Against Pitlaw's miserably grey landscape, the carnival shines electric and bright, and doesn't take long for the town's teenagers to be seduced by its neon charms and the possibility of escape. Isn't that what every carnival, ever since Something Wicked This Way Comes, has promised to little kids and teenagers, is escape? Yeah. I never wanted to run away with the carnival, so I think that's kind of weird, but I wish that more of them would have come to my town. Then also on April 1st was The Thorns, with a cool braided hair cover that I really loved. I talked about that on the previous one. That book does seem to be like a little like literary Gothic. So yeah, check out the previous video if you want to hear about The Thorns. Your Own Dark Shadow, a selection of lost Irish horror stories edited by Jack Fennell. And this is a woodcut look. That same woodcut look on the cover of a book from last month. It's got white on black trees that are surrounding a sort of small cottage and a red circle in the upper half with the title in white. It's a Helvetica font for a very modern look on that like kind of old-fashioned looking woodcut thing. I like it though, it looks good. The old house turns out to not be as empty as its new owners supposed. A nobleman barters his soul in exchange for arcane knowledge. A stranger with a terrible curse looks for an unsuspecting victim to take her place. Monsters, killers, and unquiet spirits stalk these stories, drawn from places where folklore, the Gothic and modern fiction intertwine. Irish literature's dark and ever-present shadow. These are traditional stories. On April 8th, we have Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes. This modern, blocky sans serif font tells us that this is a sci-fi. If you see that those letters that are sort of squished and, you know, they look all modern and futuristic, like some sort of old console computer or something. So yeah. We also see shadowed monstrous claws reaching over somebody who's in cryo sleep. And I felt weird, like, knowing what cryo sleep is. cryosleep doesn't exist. We don't have cryosleep. So I'm all like, oh yeah, there's a dude in cryosleep. Like it's a thing, and it's not that I know of. I mean, I know we freeze people, but not like this. So these cold blues and grays of like the color, I guess, of a sleeping spaceship are set off by this very bold red text. Haley is on the run from an interplanetary political scandal that has put a huge target on her back. She heads for what seems to be the perfect place to lay low, a gigantic space barge storing the cryogenically frozen bodies of Earth's most fortunate citizens from more than a century ago. That's a great choice, actually. The cryo program, created by billionaire trillionaire tech genius Zale Winfield, is long defunct, and the AI hologram hosts are ghoulishly created in the likeness of Winfield's 3 adult children. They're glitchy. The ships feel like a crypt, and the isolation gets to Haley almost immediately. She starts to see figures crawling in the hallways, and there's a constant scraping, slithering, and rattling echoing in the vents. Now, I don't know if this is based on a video game, much like Alien Isolation, which is terrifying, and I didn't get through that whole game because it was very difficult, but because I'm not a stealth game fan, but it was fun, and I've replayed it a couple times to the point that I can get to because it's fun. Cold Eternity. This feels like it should be the next Alien Isolation like video game. The next book is a book that I have a review copy for, The Cut, a novel by C.J. Dotson. This comes out April 8th. It's got this very nice use of Helvetica, very sparse, black text on white, very basic. Simple cover with a wormy red tentacle slithering out or retreating into a shower stall drain. I'll actually be starting reading this really soon. I'm reading 1184, I believe the title is. Right now I just started that yesterday evening, and it was really, really good so far, especially as a podcaster. I love books about podcasters, but we'll see what The Cut is about. A historic hotel long past its prime and huddled along the Cut, a questionable Lake Erie beach. Isn't Sadie Miles' ideal place to raise a toddler while also navigating her second pregnancy? After finally fleeing her abusive ex-fiancé, though, Sadie's new housekeeping position and free room at L'Arpin Hotel is the best that she can manage. On her first night, Sadie runs into a guest struggling in the hotel's pool, only to find the water calm and empty when she gets there, leaving her with a lingering unease. When a guest goes missing, and her manager insists that they simply must have left without checking out, Sadie suspects that he's covering up darker goings-on at the hotel. I normally don't like books about single women, pregnancy, and all that stuff because it's just not something I relate to, but I used to clean hotel rooms, and hotels are creepy as hell, so I'm really looking forward to this. And that it takes place in a border area of some sort. A lot of the US border areas are very, very similar to Canada, and there's a big blur there for me in all the border states that I just kind of consider them Canadian, so I feel like I'll relate to the landscape. Also on April 8th, they're Monstrous Hearts by Yigit Turhan, if I'm pronouncing that right. The unfortunate thing, it's a gorgeous looking book, and they have a special edition out as well that looks really gorgeous, but it has this Kindle Premier title, and I've talked about these before, where the title on Amazon or wherever is not the actual title of the book, and they pump it up with all these clickbaity words. So the Kindle Premier title of this is They're Monstrous Hearts, a Gothic horror novel with a dual timeline and a suspenseful mystery. That's not the title of the book, so it shouldn't be listed as the title of the book. I find that so highly annoying, so highly, highly, highly annoying. I wish people didn't do it. It's misleading. But I loved the description of this. So whenever I complain about a Kindle Premier title, it's a book I probably want to read, because otherwise I wouldn't talk about it here on the show, right? It has this lovely cover with red blocky text and sort of like impact style, like a very thick Helvetica, like a stop sign, kind of big, bold sans serif font, featuring a woman's hands with a butterfly and a caterpillar, and this red text. It's a blood cherry red kind of text. It's mirrored in these long fingernails, so it looks like it was such a classic old throwback to old painted gorgeous horror novels of the 80s. It's very effective. A mysterious stranger shows up at Ricardo's apartment with some news. His grandmother, Perian, has died, and Riccardo has inherited her villa in Milan, along with her famed butterfly collection. The struggling writer is out of options, and he's hoping that the change of scenery in Milan will inspire him, and maybe there's some money to keep him afloat. But his grandmother's house is not as opulent as he remembers. The butterflies pinned in her glass cases seem more ominous than artful. Perian's group of mysterious old friends are constantly lurking, and there's something wrong in the greenhouse. The description goes on from there, but that was what struck me. I am very interested in this. Inherited old mansion, weird creepy old grandma, people creeping about, has like the feel that there's a cult in the neighborhood. I'm sold. And I'm also sold on basically everything that this next author writes. On April 15th, we have Senseless by Ronald Malfi, and I have a review copy of this book, so I'll be reading it really soon. The cover is like weird. It's probably the weirdest Malfi cover I've ever seen, because usually the covers are pretty classic, horror, throwback to the 80s, houses on the cover, things like that. Compelling to me. This has this woman with long red hair. She's sort of floating sideways, like she's levitating across the middle of the book, and there's not much like context. It's compelling, but it tells us nothing. The text is like Trajan Pro, and I don't know if I ever pronounced that right, if it's Trajan or Trajan, Trajan. It's a font that's used in a lot of books. And it works here. Like, I've used it on books before. Other people have used it, like, for years. This font, whatever the hell it is. There's fonts that look like it, but I think the original is Trajan Pro. Trajan is, like, the font. When a mutilated body of a young woman is discovered in the desert on the outskirts of Los Angeles, the detective assigned to the case can't deny the similarities between this murder and one that occurred a year prior. Meanwhile, Toby, a self-proclaimed human fly, begins an obsession over a woman who is unlike anyone he's ever met. A woman with rattlesnake teeth and a penchant for biting. A woman who has trapped him in her spell. A woman who may or may not be completely human. So it seems like a little bit of a departure. I'm interested. There is another narrative in there, but my throat gets sore if I read too long of a description. But it's a noir. It's a noir story. So it's not just hard-boiled horror, it's hard-boiled crime with horrific elements, I'm supposing, and paranormal, if not supernatural. So yeah, very excited to check that out. So next up we have on April 22nd a various author collection called The Map of Lost Places. Compasses and mapping tools sort of decorate the cover, which is yellow and white on black. Not quite a wood cut, but more of a clip art kind of style. Proper mix of sans serif on the large text and serif font on the small text. So it's just a really classic looking cover. But hey, if it's supposed to be some sort of weird liminal mapping thing, it works. What you hold in your hands is a travel guide to the strange and surreal, from arcades along a boardwalk and jetties at the edge of tourist towns to a rural village in Pakistan and hollows hidden deep in the forests of Pennsylvania. Strange things can happen no matter where you are. With 22 stories from authors like Brian Keene, Morris Broadus, I. Jang, Samit Basu, K.S. Walker, editors Cherie Renee Thomas and Leslie Connor take our readers on a tour of places where weird things happen, places where ghosts are real, old gods are hungry, and towns are not as idyllic as they appear to be. I like this already. I also really like the next book, and I wouldn't have been surprised if Todd Keisling has a story in the previous book. A Sundowner's Dance by Todd Keisling comes out April 22nd. The cover features this dark overhead shot of like a cul-de-sac with what looks like a pit leading to the molten core of the earth. As per usual, you know how your street ends in a hellmouth? Yeah, like that. The butter yellow serif font in bold. Just a gorgeous, like Grady Hendrix books often have this font, or old Gothics kind of have this font. The text and the title are kind of Trajan Pro. Very gorgeous, well put together cover of like a weird stone. I can't tell if it's a pit to hell or a stone that's glowing. It's very weird looking. Jerry Campbell just wants to be left alone. Grief-stricken over the death of his wife Abigail, the elderly widower and recent retiree is desperate for a change of scenery. When his realtor suggests a new home in Fairview Acres, a retirement community in the Poconos, Jerry figures it will be a nice place to spend the rest of his days in solitude until he moves in. His neighbors all say Catherine is suffering from a form of dementia called Sundowner syndrome, but as the weeks progress and strangeness mounts, Jerry begins to suspect that there's something else going on in the neighborhood, something that has to do with the huge stone in the community park. Now, of course, I too fear the ravages of age and have had elderly parents, grandparents, and things like that that you worry about continuously. So I think that this will really strike a chord. All of Todd Keisling's work does, to me personally. And I think even though Pennsylvania is not a border state, I really do relate to some of the oddities that go on there. A lot of cool horror authors come from Pennsylvania, and Todd Keisling's no exception. Also on April 22nd, we have When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I still have not read a Nat Cassidy book, and I really want to read like Mary or something else. There's got to be other Nat Cassidys I should start with instead of the new one, but we'll see. It has this like black wolf dog on the cover snarling through a window at the reader. A nice stark kind of white tall serif font. It works well with this really classic horror looking book that doesn't tell you a lot about the story. One night, Jess, a struggling actress, finds a 5-year-old runaway hiding in the bushes outside her apartment. After a violent, bloody encounter with the boy's father, she and the boy find themselves running for their lives. As they attempt to evade the boy's increasingly desperate father, Jess slowly comes to a horrifying understanding of the butchery that follows them, and that the boy can turn every fear into reality, and when the wolf finally comes home, no one will be spared. So I think this is sort of like our twist on that Twilight Zone story of the boy that could wish for anything or something or imagine anything. I have a feeling just from that short description that this is something like that, and maybe the wolf isn't real, or the wolf is the father, or the wolf, it's a werewolf book probably. I'm just assuming it's a werewolf book. Why put a wolfy dog on the cover if it's not a werewolf book, right? Unless it's a dog book. Could be about a dog. I don't know, we'll find out. The very next day, on April 23rd, we have The Rotting Room by Viggy Parr Hampton. And that's a very cool name, isn't it? Viggy Parr Hampton. Anyway, it's got this chunky kind of screen print of a woman in a black habit, like a nun, on a beige background. But she has this pop art style, sort of like Wicked Witch looking green face, and red, almost lipstick scrawled crayon font for the title scrawled across the front. Very, very surreal looking pop art style, kind of weird poster book. Sister Raphella, a newcomer to the cloistered Sisters of Divine Innocence, yearns for redemption from her horrific past. However, her new abbey, bound by a vow of silence and a disturbing burial ritual, hides its own sinister secrets. When a mysterious stranger arrives and dies soon after, her body resists decomposition, sparking claims of sainthood among the nuns, of course it would. Raphella suspects something darker. As the abbey teeters on the edge of madness, Raphella and local priest Father Bruno race to discover whether the Sisters of Divine Innocence are graced by a divine miracle or consumed by unspeakable evil. I am hoping it is unspeakable evil, of course. You know, what would I be if I didn't? On April 29th, we have Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker. Yikes, this is a beautiful, beautiful cover, a very compelling idea, but it has this Kindle Purnier title of Bat Eater and Other Names by Cora Zhang, a darkly funny, gory, and ghostly horror novel. The rest of that isn't the title. The title is, it ends with Other Names for Cora Zhang. Anyhow, so I really wish people wouldn't make pretend titles for clickbaits on Amazon. Very pretty bat, splayed over like a dried flower arrangement, sort of a play on the orange and teal look with sort of a brown umbers of the bat itself and gray blue tones behind, and it's a really gorgeous micro serif font in stark white. It's those sort of micro serifs that were showing up on the cover of the book by Todd Keisling that I was talking about, that Witchcraft for Wayward Girls has a font like that, very fat, bold serif font that has like little tiny serifs. So Cora Zhang is a crime scene cleaner, washing away the remains of brutal murders and suicides in Chinatown. But none of that seems as terrible when she's already witnessed the most horrific thing possible, her sister, Delilah, being pushed in front of a train. Before fleeing the scene, the murderer shouted 2 words, "Bat Eater." So the bloody messes don't really bother Cora. She's more bothered by the germs of the subway railing, of bare hands of a stranger, the hidden viruses around every corner, and the bite marks on her coffee table. Of course, ever since Delilah was killed right in front of her, Cora can never be sure what's real and what's in her head. So, weird Kindle printer title aside, I really like this. I like the actual title of this book quite a lot. I love the cover, and this is a very compelling description. So I'm looking forward to that. If you've read it or any of these, definitely let me know, but that one in particular, I'll be keeping an eye on. So 2 more books to go. I think there's more than 13 here. I'll have to count them up after. Polybius. Probably Polybius. I don't know. This is like a Greek word of some sort. Please help me, Michael, if you're out there and you to help me pronounce Polybius by Colin Armstrong. It's got this like hot pink blocky impact text, like a sans serif, over a dark background that has this like ominous arcade cabinet. So it looks kind of like retro, but also futuristic. But this hot pink text might be the thing that people are doing coming up this season. October 1982. Forced to move to the quiet seaside town of Tasker Bay by her mother, the only thing on high schooler Andy's mind is saving up enough money to return to her old stomping grounds in Silicon Valley. Her self-taught skills with all things electric make her the perfect fit for a job at the dingy local arcade, where she can tune out from life and bankroll her eventual escape. When Polybius, a new bleeding-edge game of unknown origin, arrives, the shop is suddenly overwhelmed with players fighting for time on the machine. After a grisly act of violence goes unsolved, the town descends into chaos. Is the arrival of the mysterious game and the disorder of Tasker Bay a coincidence? I don't think this is YA, even though it deals with a young person. I don't think it is. I'll have to look more into this book, but I'm quite interested in it. Not just because I spent a lot of time in arcades as a teen, and I wish I had. That was like the dream, right? When we were younger, we, like people who are almost 50, that you would be wealthy enough to have arcade machines and cabinets of your own in your room or your house or your like living room. I would have them in the kitchen. I think I'd have them in the kitchen. Nothing better than while you're waiting for dinner to cook to just turn to the left and play some Galga, I think, or Pitfall. Something cool like that, something fun. Golden axe. Oh, I would love to have a golden axe cabinet in the kitchen. That'd be so cool. But yeah, the final book is one I have applied for a review copy of. The Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig, because I've not read any Chuck Wendig. I feel really weird that I've not read Chuck Wendig, you know? It's like having not read Dean Koontz, I guess. That's what it feels like. So this book comes as advertised. The cover features a spiral staircase in the dark yellow lit woods, sort of like an unsettling morning shot of the rising sun in the woods with this metal, I think, spiral staircase. And with all caps, kind of like a Gilles Sans kind of font. A lot of books use like a plain Arial Helvetica looking sans serif font, but this is something a little pointier, like Verdana perhaps, or there's another font I'm thinking of here, Futura, but Gilles Sans is probably the most popular of this sort of font. No one cares about fonts. 5 high school friends are bonded by an oath to protect one another no matter what. Then on a camping trip in the middle of the forest, they find something extraordinary, a mysterious staircase to nowhere. One friend walks up and never comes back down. Then the staircase disappears. 20 years later, the staircase has reappeared. Now the group returns to find the lost boy and what lies beyond the staircase in the woods. I'm wondering who told them the staircase was back, or were they on a trip to remember their friend 20 years later and discovered the staircase? Like, I'm very intrigued just by that little story we're told in the description alone. Have you read any of these books, or are they on your list? especially if you're going to be reviewing them, let me know, because I'll go watch or listen or read. I believe I may do a poll, because I have some of these already as reviews, but there's quite a few other books that I really do want to add to the backwards bookshelf. Any book that I'm buying now, I'm just putting on the backwards bookshelf. I think I'll just keep this rolling forever. I've got 2 books upstairs that I'm reading right now from it, so I'll be picking 2 more books for April in a week or so. So yeah, tune in for that. Thank you so much for watching, and have an ooky spooky day.